Imagine stepping out of like this blinding Mediterranean sun and descending right into a chaotic, dusty courtyard.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The smell of unwashed bodies and fear, it just hangs heavy in the air.
Yeah.
And over the roar of the crowd, you hear the unmistakable rhythmic clinking of iron chains.
It's a heavy scene.
It really is. Because you are standing in the center of an ancient Roman slave market.
Right.
You are a wealthy father, but, I mean, your wealth means absolutely nothing right now. Because you are scanning the exhausted, terrified faces of these prisoners of war,
Yeah.
desperate looking for your son.
Your own son.
Exactly. He was stolen from you 20 years ago when he was just, a 4-year-old boy playing in your home.
Yes.
You haven't seen him since. You don't even know if he's alive.
Yeah.
And then just last week, your other son, your only remaining heir, was captured in a brutal border skirmish.
It's just unimaginable loss.
So you are a man completely paralyzed by grief,
Right.
trying to literally buy human lives to somehow barter your family back together.
It is a scene of absolute, just suffocating despair. And the man you're describing here is Hegio.
Right.
He is the central character of a story that, at least on the surface, belongs entirely to the ancient pagan world.
And that's kind of the crazy part about our deep dive today. Usually when we want a vivid, tear-jerking illustration of the gospel, a story about a lost son, a father's broken heart, or a willing substitute stepping into the dark so someone else can go free, we open the letters of Paul, right?
Right, yeah, or the Old Testament.
Exactly. We look to the Old Testament prophets. We read someone who actually knew the master painter. We don't generally look to a pagan Roman playwright writing a stage play 2 full centuries before Jesus was even born.
No, they really don't. But that is the remarkable journey we are taking today. We are looking at a masterpiece called The Captives, or Captivi, written around 200 BC by Titus Maccius Plautus.
Plautus, yeah.
And by stepping into this incredibly dark 2,000-year-old story, we are going to see how the ancient human heart was just crying out in desperation for rescue, for substitution, and honestly, for legal adoption.
Yes.
And when you see how vividly this pagan playwright inadvertently painted this gorgeous shadow of the gospel, I mean, it is going to completely overwhelm you with a fresh appreciation for the finished historical work of Jesus Christ.
I really want to spend a lot of time on that today.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just, an exercise in ancient literature. We're not just doing a history lesson here.
Definitely not.
The themes we are pulling out of the dust today are going to directly challenge how you and I walk with God, how we deal with tragedy, and how we, honestly, often try to barter our way through our spiritual lives.
Oh, absolutely. We do that all the time.
We really do. But to really feel the weight of Hegio's desperation at that slave market, kind of have to grasp the sheer terror of the world Plautus was writing in. I mean, the Mediterranean 200 BC wasn't just a tough place to live. It was a meat grinder.
That's the perfect way to describe it. The historical context is essential for understanding why this story resonated so deeply with its original audience. Rome had just survived the Second Punic War against Carthage.
Right, Hannibal and the elephants.
Exactly. And when we say survived, we are talking about a generational trauma. Hannibal had marched his army over the Alps and spent a decade and a half essentially liquidating Roman armies up and down the Italian peninsula.
Just wiping them out.
Completely. At the Battle of Cannae alone, Rome lost something like 20% of its adult male population in a single afternoon.
Wow. I mean, the scale of that death is almost impossible for us to comprehend today.
Yeah.
20%.
In one day. Every single family in the Roman Republic would have had an empty chair at the dinner table.
Every single one.
And the nightmare didn't even end when Carthage was finally defeated in 21 BC. Almost immediately, Rome was drawn into these massive, grueling conflicts in Greece, the Macedonian and Aetolian Wars.
So they just go right back to war?
Right back into it. So the amphitheater seats where Plautus is premiering The Captives, they are filled with people who have lost fathers, brothers, and sons.
Yeah.
And in ancient warfare, the terror wasn't just dying on the end of a spear. It was surviving the battle only to be rounded up, stripped of your identity, and sold into foreign slavery.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. Because when you became a prisoner of war back then,
Right.
it wasn't like a modern POW camp where there are, Geneva Conventions and Red Cross packages.
Oh, no, not at all.
You literally ceased to exist as a legal person, didn't you?
You did. Under ancient Roman law, there was this concept that dictated what happened to a citizen captured by the enemy. The moment you were dragged across the border in chains, you suffered what was essentially a civil death.
A civil death.
Wow. Your marriage was legally dissolved. Your will was executed as if your body had actually been buried in the ground.
That is terrifying. So your family just assumes you're dead and moves on.
Legally, they had to. Your property was redistributed. You were essentially a ghost. You are now a piece of property belonging to a foreign master, subject to whatever manual labor or physical abuse they decided to inflict upon you.
So when the play opens and is literally titled The Captives, the audience isn't leaning back in their seats anticipating some lighthearted theoretical thought experiment.
No, they are feeling this visceral, stomach-churning anxiety.
Yeah, they're probably thinking, my brother is currently trapped in a quarry in Greece. Or my son is in chains right now waiting for me to ransom him.
Exactly. That anxiety was a daily reality for them. The only hope a captive had was this legal mechanism where their family back home could raise an exorbitant amount of money, send an agent across enemy lines, and literally buy them back.
If they could even afford it.
Right. And if they were brought back across the Roman border, their rights would be legally restored. And this is the agonizing reality that our main character, Hegio, is living in.
So Hegio is an older, wealthy Greek citizen, right? And he has just received word that his adult son, Philippodamus, has been captured in a border war by the enemy nation of Eli's.
Yes, the neighboring enemy.
But we have to remember this is his second lost son. 20 years prior, a rogue servant in his own household kidnapped his 4-year-old toddler and just vanished.
It's just devastating.
So Hegio has been living with this 20-year open wound, and now his final child, his only hope, has been swallowed up by the slave markets too.
And the psychological toll on Hegio, it really drives the entire plot of the play.
Yeah.
He is so frantic to save his newly captured son that he starts liquidating his assets and doing something incredibly grim.
Right.
He goes to the local slave markets and starts buying up prisoners of war who have been captured from Eli's, the very nation that is currently holding his son.
So he is literally hoarding human beings.
He is. His calculation is purely transactional. He figures if he buys enough high-ranking Ilian prisoners, he will eventually find someone important enough that he can offer an exchange.
Like a hostage swap.
Exactly. He's thinking, I'll give you back your nobleman, and you give me back my son.
Okay, hold on. I need to pause here for a second because we really have to address the elephant in the room regarding the genre of this play.
Right, the comedy aspect.
Yeah. Plautus was famous for writing comedies, but buying slaves to barter for your war-torn family, that is incredibly dark. I mean, to modern ears, that sounds like a full-blown tragedy.
It really does.
It would be like a modern network sitcom known for cheap laughs and slapstick suddenly doing a deeply serious hour-long episode on human trafficking.
Yes, that's exactly what it was like. It was a massive shock to the system for his audience, too. Plautus was the master of the bawdy joke. His normal plays featured deceitful teenagers trying to steal money from their stingy fathers, illicit romances, physical gags, trickster servants. Typical sitcom stuff of the ancient world.
Right, popcorn entertainment.
Right. But he knew The Captives was radically different. He actually has a character come out in the prologue before the play even starts and tell the audience, look, adjust your expectations.
He literally warns them.
He warns them. He says, you are not going to see dirty jokes today.
Yeah.
You aren't going to see greedy pimps or cheating spouses. We are staging a story about chaste morals, profound duty, and extreme sacrifice. Scholars actually consider it a totally unique genre for him. They call it a serious comedy.
A serious comedy. I love that. And the inciting incident of this serious comedy is this brilliant, high-stakes deception.
It's so good.
So Hegio goes to the market and he purchases 2 very specific men. One is a young, wealthy nobleman named Philocrates.
Right.
And the other is Philocrates' devoted personal servant, a man named Tyndarus. Hegio brings these 2 captives into his home, hoping this nobleman is his golden ticket to ransom his son.
But before Hegio can fully interrogate them and set up the swap, the 2 captives hatch this desperate, incredibly dangerous plan.
Because they know what's coming.
Exactly. They realize Hegio is going to keep the nobleman as a hostage and send the servant back to Eli's to arrange the ransom money. So, in secret, they swap clothes and identities.
So the wealthy master puts on the rough, scratchy tunic of the slave.
Yes.
And the servant puts on the fine, expensive robes of the master.
Right. The plan is that Tyndarus, the servant, will pretend to be the wealthy nobleman. He will stay behind in Hegio's house wearing the heavy iron chains, acting as the high-value hostage.
Wow.
This will trick Hegio into sending the actual master, who is now disguised as a lowly servant, back home to freedom, under the pretense that this servant is just going to fetch the ransom money.
I mean, the risk Tyndarus is taking here is just astronomical. He is volunteering to stay in the hands of a desperate, grieving enemy.
A very unpredictable enemy.
Yeah. If the deception is discovered, he won't just be sold. He will be tortured or executed.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, I will wear the chains. I will absorb the dangers so that my master can walk out of that door to freedom.
And the loyalty of the servant is profoundly moving, but Plautus layers in this dramatic irony that elevates this from just a clever trick to an absolute heartbreaking tragedy.
Oh man, this is the part that gets me.
Because the prologue reveals a secret to the audience that the characters on stage do not know.
Oh, this is the twist that makes the whole play agonizing to watch. The audience knows that the servant, Tyndarus, the man who is bravely stepping into the chains and putting his life on the line in Hegio's house, is actually Hegio's long-lost son.
Yes. The 4-year-old toddler who was kidnapped 20 years ago was sold into slavery, and he ended up being purchased by the family of Philocrates.
So he's been there the whole time.
The whole time. Tyndarus has grown up as a slave, having no memory of his true identity. He doesn't know who his real father is. And Hegio has absolutely no idea that the slave he just bought at the market and locked in irons in his living room is his own flesh and blood.
I mean, the dramatic tension there is almost unbearable. Every time Hegio speaks harshly to Tyndarus, every time he threatens him with punishment, the audience is just gasping.
They're on the edge of their seats.
They're watching a father unknowingly terrorize his own child.
And the emotional weight is so heavy that Plautus intentionally introduces a character purely to give the audience a breather.
Right, because you can't just hold that tension for 2 hours.
Exactly. There is a stock character in Roman theater known as the parasite, and in this play, his name is Ergasilas.
The ultimate freeloader.
Oh, totally.
A parasite in their culture was basically a guy whose entire career was hanging around wealthy people, offering them flattery and witty banter in exchange for a spot at the dinner table.
Right. And Ergasilas is completely obsessed with food. I mean, while Hegio is weeping over his lost sons, Ergasilas is delivering these massive, dramatic monologues, weeping over the fact that the local fishmongers are colluding to raise the price of eel.
It's so absurd.
It is. He is terrified of starving. He jokes about how his stomach is a bottomless pit and how he is willing to suffer any indignity as long as there is roasted pork at the end of it.
It's hilarious, but, you know, it's not just cheap comedy, is it? When you put Ergasilas next to Hegio, it serves a real profound literary purpose.
Oh, the contrast is brilliant. You have Ergasilas, a man consumed by physical hunger. His deepest desire is a plate of cheese and meat. Next to him, you have Hegio, a man consumed by a profound, agonizing spiritual and emotional hunger. Hegio is starving for the restoration of his family. By showing us how trivial Ergasilas' hunger is, Plautus really magnifies the absolute devastation of Hegio's grief.
But that desperation leads Hegio to a very specific and I think spiritually revealing kind of coping mechanism. Hegio is operating entirely within a transactional worldview here.
Very much so.
He looks at human beings as commercial commodities. He genuinely believes that if he just hoards enough wealth, if he buys enough human flesh on the open market, he can force the universe to give him what he wants. He is trying to buy an illusion of control.
And that illusion of control is the perfect pivot into looking at this ancient story through the lens of Scripture, because Hegio is a pagan man reacting to tragedy the only way a pagan man knows how, by bartering.
Yeah.
He assumes the gods, or fate, operate on a ledger system. If I pay this much silver, I get my son back. It's an equation to him.
And honestly, before we judge Hegio too harshly for buying and selling slaves to get his way, we have to look in the mirror.
Oh, definitely.
Because obviously we aren't treating prisoners of war of the modern church.
Mm-hmm.
But the underlying psychology, this desire to commercialize our relationship with the divine when tragedy strikes it, is deeply woven into the fallen human heart.
It's our default.
It really is. When a terrifying diagnosis comes down, when a marriage starts falling apart, or when we face financial ruin, our default mode is often to become a Hegio.
We try to open a ledger with God.
Yes. We think, okay, God, I am going to increase my giving this month. I'm going to serve in the children's ministry. I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and read 3 chapters of Leviticus every single day.
We've all been there.
We have. We say, I am going to pay the price so that you owe me the restoration of my peace. We use our moral effort as currency to buy an illusion of control over our circumstances.
Right.
We want to be the ones paying the ransom because if we pay it, we stay in the driver's seat.
That is so true. It is the great deception of legalism. We prefer the illusion of a transactional relationship because it feels manageable. Vulnerability is terrifying.
Right.
Grace is terrifying. Because grace requires you to admit you are completely bankrupt and you cannot buy your way out of the crisis. And the biblical worldview utterly shatters Hegio's approach. God does not barter with his creation.
No, he doesn't. And the Bible also shatters the Roman acceptance of the foundational crime in this play. I mean, the entire tragedy rests on the fact that a rogue servant, Stalagmus, kidnapped a 4-year-old boy and sold him for profit.
Yes, the original sin of the play, so to speak.
Right. And to understand the radical nature of the scriptures here, you really have to understand how the ancient Mediterranean world viewed a crime like kidnapping.
Because it wasn't how we view it today. Outside of Israel and the surrounding pagan cultures, kidnapping was generally treated as a property crime.
Just a property crime.
Yeah, and the severity of the punishment was entirely relative to your social class.
Right. If you look at, like, the Code of Hammurabi, the Babylonian legal text, justice was on a sliding scale. If you stole a wealthy nobleman, you might face execution. But if you stole a commoner or a lower-class laborer, you could just pay a fine and walk away.
Exactly. The value of human life was determined by their economic output and their social status.
But then you open the Old Testament. You read Exodus 21.16, where God is establishing the legal and moral framework for the nation of Israel.
And it is so different.
It's radical. The law declares with absolute, unyielding severity, whoever steals a man and sells him, and anyone found in possession of him, shall be put to death.
Wow.
There is no sliding scale there. There is no caveat for whether the person stolen was a wealthy merchant or a beggar on the street. It is a capital offense across the board.
And the theological reasoning behind that is just breathtaking. It is rooted in the doctrine of the imago Dei, the image of God, which is established right there in Genesis 1.
Right.
Every single human being, regardless of their social utility or wealth, is created in the image of the Creator. Therefore, to steal a human being, to strip them of their freedom, chain them up, and reduce them to an economic commodity, it is not a property crime.
Right.
It is a direct, violent assault on the image of God himself. It is an offense of the highest order against the Creator.
That reframes the entire play for me. The Roman audience is sitting there watching Hegio buy and sell human beings, viewing it as a tragic but, normal business transaction.
Normal for them, yeah.
But the biblical lens exposes it as an absolute horror. It reveals a world that has completely lost sight of the divine image, treating image bearers like cattle. And this blindness, it extends to Hegio's understanding of how the universe is governed too, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Hegio prides himself on his cunning. He comes up with this elaborate scheme to buy the captive, secure the hostage, and outsmart his enemies. He really thinks he is the master of his own fate.
Right.
But the bitter irony here is that his human scheming is exactly what leads him to unknowingly lock his own son in iron chains.
And the Romans had a goddess for this concept, didn't they?
They did. They called her Fortuna, blind fate, or chance. In their worldview, the universe is just a giant roulette wheel. Sometimes you spin it and win, and sometimes you spin it and end up torturing your own child.
Yeah.
There is no ultimate purpose, just the chaotic collision of human schemes and dumb luck.
But again, the scriptures offer a vastly superior and honestly infinitely more comforting reality. The Bible rejects blind fate entirely. Proverbs 16.9 gives us the exact opposite of the Roman worldview. The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps.
That's it right there. Hegio is frantically planning his way, but because he doesn't know the God who establishes the steps, he is stumbling in the dark. He is a victim of his own limited vision.
Yes.
When you look at Tyndarus, the beloved son who was stolen, sold into foreign slavery, tested through intense suffering, and remains unrecognized by his own family until a dramatic moment of revelation. I mean, it is impossible not to think of the Old Testament narrative of Joseph.
Oh, the parallels are absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Joseph was the beloved son of Jacob, betrayed, trafficked by his own brothers, sold into Egypt, endures years of unjust captivity and imprisonment, and eventually he stands in the seat of power, completely unrecognized by the very brothers who sold him, until he finally reveals himself in this massive flood of tears. Structurally, Plautus and Genesis are playing the exact same chords.
They really are. But the theology driving the chords couldn't be more different. In Plautus's play, when the truth is finally revealed, the characters just marvel at how crazy chance is.
Right, they're like, wow, what a coincidence.
Exactly. They chalk it up to lucky timing. But in Genesis, Joseph looks at his brothers, the men who subjected him to decades of trauma, and he gives us the definitive thesis statement of divine providence.
Genesis 50.20. As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive.
God meant it.
Yeah.
Joseph doesn't say God reacted to your evil and managed to salvage the situation. He says God actively superintended the darkest human evil, the trauma of human trafficking, the false accusations, and the lonely years in the dungeon, weaving it all into a redemptive masterpiece that resulted in salvation.
That is so powerful.
The pagan world offers you the terror of blind chance. The gospel offers you the deep, unshakable comfort of a sovereign father who wastes none of your tears.
Amen to that. Which makes the turning point of the play so incredibly intense, because Tyndarus' suffering is about to reach its absolute peak. Let's look closely at what happens when Hegio's illusion of control just comes crashing down.
Okay, so the deception is running perfectly. Tyndarus is in Hegio's house, wearing the fine clothes, pretending to be the wealthy nobleman Philocrates.
Right.
The real Philocrates, dressed as a servant, has been sent away by Hegio to fetch the ransom. Tyndarus just needs to buy time. But then Hegio runs into another prisoner of war at the market, a man named Aristophanes.
Oh, right. And Aristophanes actually knows the real Philocrates from back home in Ely's.
He does. And Hegio, thinking he is doing a nice thing and reuniting two old friends, brings Aristophanes back to the house to see the hostage.
It is a catastrophic collision.
It really is. Aristophanes walks in, takes one look at Tyndarus and the nobleman's clothes, and is totally confused. He says to Hegio, "What are you doing? Why is this man dressed like a master? This isn't Philocrates. This is his servant, Tyndarus."
And Tyndarus, he tries to play it off, right? He frantically tries to convince Hegio that Aristophanes is insane, that he's a madman having a delusion. But the evidence is too overwhelming. The secret is out. The identity swap is exposed.
And the realization hits Hegio, and he completely loses his mind.
I mean, you have to remember his psychological state.
Exactly. He thought he finally had the leverage to save his son, and now he realizes he has been played for a fool. He let the wealthy hostage, his only bargaining chip, walk right out the front door, and he is left holding a worthless servant.
Wow.
In a blind, furious rage, he sentences Tyndarus to a fate that is arguably worse than immediate execution.
He orders his guards to bind Tyndarus in the heaviest iron fetters they can find, and he commands that Tyndarus be dragged down into the underground stone quarries.
The stone quarries, the Latomia. We really need to describe what this actually meant in the ancient world, because this wasn't just a tough manual labor camp. Being sent to the quarries was a protracted death sentence.
Paint that picture for us. Describe the sensory horror of that place.
Okay, imagine being lowered into a deep subterranean pit. The air is thick with rock dust, making it agonizing to just breathe.
Just choking on it.
Yeah. There is very little light. You are chained to other men, handed a heavy pickaxe, and forced to hack away at solid limestone for 12 to 16 hours a day.
It sounds like hell.
It was. The guards beat you mercilessly if you slow down. The food rations are barely enough to keep your heart beating. Disease is rampant. When men died in the quarries, they often weren't even brought up for burial. They were just tossed into a corner.
Oh, my goodness.
And Hegio doesn't just send Tyndarus there. He explicitly instructs the guards to make sure Tyndarus suffers more brutally than any other slave in the pit.
It is an absolute nightmare. And this is the moment where Tyndarus does something that would have left the Roman audience in stunned silence.
Yes.
He doesn't fall to his knees and beg for mercy.
Yeah.
He doesn't point the finger and say, "Please, it was my master's idea. He forced me to do it. Spare me."
Not at all.
He stands incredibly tall in front of this enraged father. He boldly accepts the suffering. He looks at Hegio and says, essentially, "If I die down in that darkness, I care little, so long as my master goes free. I have secured his safety, and that is my glory."
Wow. It is a breathtaking, tears-in-your-eyes picture of substitutionary sacrifice. Tyndarus knowingly and willingly steps into the chains. He embraces the wrath of the father specifically so that someone else can walk in freedom.
Exactly.
For the Roman mind, this was the ultimate expression of a concept called fides. It means unbreakable loyalty, good faith, and duty. Tyndarus is the embodiment of perfect fides. He is willing to lay down his life for his master.
It is a beautiful shadow, but as Christians, when we look at this, we see a crucial, glorious difference between what Tyndarus did and what Jesus Christ did.
Right. Tyndarus is amazing, but he is not a perfect Christ figure.
No, because Tyndarus steps into the chains for a master he deeply loves. Philocrates was a good master to him. They grew up together. Tyndarus suffers out of deep affection for a friend he deems worthy of the sacrifice.
And the gospel turns that completely upside down.
Yes. Jesus Christ did not step out of heaven to suffer for his friends. He did not go to the cross for people who were loyal to him. He suffered for his enemies.
The very people who hated him.
Exactly. He suffered for the very people swinging the hammers. The Apostle Paul captures this divide perfectly in Romans chapter 5, verses 7 and 8.
Right. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even to die. But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us.
That is the vast canyon between human loyalty and sovereign grace. Human loyalty says, I will endure the quarry for the good, the worthy, the honorable.
Yes.
Sovereign grace says, I will endure the wrath of God for the rebel, the hater, the ungodly criminal. Tyndarus substitutes himself for a good man. Christ substitutes himself for us.
That is so profound. And this brings us to the core mechanism of the play, and really of the gospel itself, the concept of ransom.
Right, the ransom.
Hegio is obsessed with ransom. He believes he can use perishable wealth, silver, gold, human hostages to buy freedom and secure lasting peace. Tyndarus uses his own physical body to buy time. They're both trying to pay a massive debt.
But the New Testament takes this cultural economic concept of ransom and elevates it to a cosmic reality. The Apostle Peter writes his first letter to early Christians, many of whom were actual slaves, or former slaves, by the way.
We understood this intimately.
They knew exactly how much human flesh cost on the market.
Yeah.
They knew what a ransom price was.
And Peter writes in 1 Peter 1:18-19, "You are ransomed from the feudal ways inherited from your forefathers, not with perishable things such as silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Christ, like that of a lamb without blemish or spot."
Hegio thought he could use perishable things, but, silver tarnishes, gold gets stolen, money runs out. Our spiritual captivity, our bondage to sin, our rebellion against a holy God, it was so deep, the debt was so astronomical that no amount of human currency could ever balance the scales.
No.
The only adequate ransom price for an eternal crime was the eternal, precious blood of the Son of God.
Amen. Which sets the stage for the dramatic climax of the play. So Tyndarus is down in the agonizing darkness of the quarries, suffering the wrath of Hegio. But suddenly the real master, Philocrates, returns.
And he didn't just run away. He kept his word. Philocrates returns from Eli's, and he brings back Hegio's recently captured son, Philopolemus.
The ransom exchange is complete.
It is. But Philocrates brings someone else with him, too. He brings an old, wretched runaway slave named Stalagmus.
Ah, Stalagmus. He is the rogue's servant. He is the man who kidnapped Hegio's 4-year-old boy 20 years ago.
The one who started it all.
Exactly. Hegio immediately recognizes him and begins violently interrogating him. And under pressure, the truth finally comes spilling out.
Stalagmus confesses. He says, yes, I stole your boy. And I sold him in Eli's to a wealthy man. Philocrates is standing right there listening to this, and he pieces it together.
The light bulb goes on.
He says, wait, my father bought a 4-year-old boy 20 years ago. He gave him to me as my personal servant. That boy was Tyndarus.
The literary term for this is anagnoresis, a sudden, shattering recognition of truth.
Oh, wow.
And the realization hits Hegio like a physical blow. The slave he just condemned to the stone quarries, the man he just locked in heavy iron chains in order to be worked to death, is his own beloved son.
The grief and the shock are overwhelming. Instantly, Hegio orders the guards to run to the quarries and bring Tyndarus up from the darkness.
Imagine that scene. They drag this battered, dust-covered, exhausted man up from the pit. He's expecting to be executed, but instead, Hegio falls on his neck weeping.
And it doesn't just say, oops, my mistake, you're free to go.
Yeah.
The heavy iron chains are struck off his wrists. His ragged, sweat-stained slave garments are stripped away and replaced with the robes of a nobleman.
He is instantly restored.
Not just to freedom, but to his rightful place as the heir of the household. The slave is revealed to be the son.
It is a profoundly moving picture. And when we look at that moment through the lens of the New Testament, it points us directly to the legal and spiritual reality of our salvation.
Yes, it does.
The Apostle Paul explains this exact dynamic in Galatians chapter 4, verses 4-7.
Let's unpack that because Paul is using the Roman legal framework to explain a divine miracle here.
He is. Paul writes, "But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons.
Now, we have to explain how adoption worked in the Roman world, because it wasn't just a sentimental welcoming of a child into a foster home like we might think of today.
Not at all. It was a rigorous, ironclad legal transaction. In Roman law, a father had absolute power, patria potestas, over his household.
Life and death power, basically.
Exactly. To adopt someone, you had to go through a formal, public, legal ritual. The biological father or former master literally had to sell the person 3 times to break the old legal bonds completely.
3 times.
Once the adoption was finalized by a magistrate, the adopted person's old life ceased to exist legally. All their previous debts were instantly canceled. They were given a new name, a new identity, and the absolute irrevocable legal right to the new father's inheritance.
It completely obliterated their past.
Completely. Paul is telling the Galatians, because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son, and if a son, then an heir through God.
But again, I marvel at the contrast here, because the gospel is so much better than the play.
Always.
In Plautus' story, Tyndarus is freed because he was always a son by nature. He always had the noble bloodline. It was just a case of mistaken identity. Hegio discovers that the man in the chains was secretly innocent and noble all along.
Right. But God does not suffer from mistaken identity.
Exactly. When God looks at us, he doesn't peel back the layers and say, oh, look, they were secretly good and noble all along.
No, he knows exactly who we are.
We were actually spiritual slaves. We were actually guilty rebels, willingly bound in the quarries of our own sin, rightly condemned by the holy law.
We belong in the quarry.
We did. But God takes actual guilty slaves, and by pure, unmerited grace, he makes them his sons and daughters. He adopts us at the cost of his true son's blood.
A pardoned criminal goes free, but he doesn't get to move into the judge's mansion and inherit his wealth.
Right.
The gospel says we are not just pardoned, we are adopted. We are given the full legal rights of Jesus Christ himself.
This theology is so soaring and beautiful, but we really have to ground it. We need to talk about real-world discipleship.
Let's do it.
How does this ancient play and the gospel truths it highlights change the way you and I live our lives on a Tuesday morning?
Well, the first application changes how we interact with the secular culture around us. Early Christian leaders, men like Jerome and Athanasius, were deeply educated in classical pagan literature.
They read stuff like this.
They read plays like The Captives. And instead of just burning the scrolls because they were written by pagans, they actively used these stories to illustrate biblical truths to their culture.
They called it plundering the Egyptians, didn't they?
They did. It's a reference to the Exodus. When the Israelites were freed from slavery, God told them to ask the Egyptians for their gold and silver.
Right.
The Israelites took the wealth of a pagan nation and eventually used it to build the tabernacle, the dwelling place of God. The early church fathers believed that all truth is God's truth.
Yes.
So when a pagan writer like Plautus stumbled upon a beautiful, true concept like the nobility of substitutionary sacrifice, the Christians would take that cultural artifact, polish it off, and say, look at this beauty. Let me show you how it actually points to Jesus.
That is incredibly freeing for us today.
It really is.
You don't have to be terrified of the culture. You don't have to isolate yourself from every piece of secular art. When you are watching a movie with a non-Christian friend, or reading a novel, or listening to a song that features a desperate rescue, or a hero laying down his life, or a deep aching longing for a home, use it. Plunder it.
Build a bridge with it.
Yes. You can turn to your friend and say, do you know why that movie scene brought you to tears?
Yeah.
Do you know why that song moves you? It's because you were created by God for a story exactly like that.
That's it.
Your heart is starving for the true story, the historical reality where the hero actually did step into the chains and lay down his life for you. The world is constantly writing echoes of the gospel in their art because they can't help it. We just have the privilege of pointing them to the source.
But there is a second, deeply personal application for our own discipleship here, and it goes back to the psychology of the stone quarries.
Okay.
Think about Tyndarus the day after the play ends. The chains have been struck off. He is legally declared a son. He is sleeping in a soft bed. But when he takes his shirt off, he still has the thick, jagged scars of the quarry on his back. His muscles probably still ache. When someone yells suddenly in the hallway, he probably still flinches, expecting the guard's whip.
Oh, wow. He is legally free, But his mind has been conditioned by slavery.
Exactly. And this is the profound struggle of the Christian life. How often do Christians who have been legally adopted by the King of the universe, who have been completely set free from the penalty of sin by the blood of Christ, wake up every single morning and act like slaves?
We go right back to Hegio's transactional mindset.
We do?
Living like a slave today looks like waking up and striving for approval. It looks like thinking, I have to earn God's love today. I messed up yesterday. I lost my temper with the kids. I didn't pray enough, so God is angry. He's going to send me back to the spiritual quarries unless I perform well today to pay him back.
It is living in a constant, low-level state of anxiety. It is the belief that you owe a debt that hasn't been fully settled.
But true, biblical discipleship means fiercely resting in your adoption. The transaction is over. Jesus paid it all.
Yes, he did.
You do not have to bargain with God. You do not have to fear the chains. You obey God not to avoid the whip, but because you deeply love the Father who brought you out of the darkness. You are fully known, fully accepted, and fully free.
You are an heir. You are seated at the king's table.
We have covered incredible ground today. We started in the dust of a pagan Roman slave market, terrified of war and loss. We watched a grieving father try to buy an illusion of control.
Such a sad picture.
We followed a fiercely loyal servant down into the suffocating darkness of the stone quarries, watching him willingly take the heavy iron chains meant for his master. And we watched that ancient shadow lead us straight to the foot of the historical cross, where our true chains were broken and where our legal adoption was signed in the blood of Christ.
It is a trajectory from profound human tragedy to overwhelming divine grace. And I want to leave you with one final thought to meditate on as you go about your week.
Let's hear it.
We have spent this time marveling at Tyndarus stepping into the chains for a master he loved. But consider this. If an ancient Roman playwright, living in a brutal world of cruelty, polytheism, and slave markets, could imagine the breathtaking beauty of a servant willingly taking the chains of his master, how much more should our hearts be shattered, humbled, and completely remade by the historical reality of the King of Glory stepping out of heaven to take the chains of his rebellious slaves?
Wow. If the human mind could imagine a story where the servant saves the master, how beautiful is the reality that the master came to save the servants?
Exactly.
What an unshakable foundation to build your life upon. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the text. As you go out into the world today, walk not as a captive striving to earn your freedom, but as a beloved, adopted, fully forgiven child of the King. We'll see you next time.